Good morning, guys. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir, you're audible. And your screen is also visible.
Okay, fine. So today, actually, you can consider the main concept of edu.net is going to start from today, right? Because mostly, if you know, right? So basically, in the database, we are creating the storage procedure, and from our .NET application or any kind of application, right? You can take into consideration console, Windows Form, web application, web services.
Empezó la clase, chico.
Sorry, anyone saying anything? Right? So any kind of web application you develop, you need to communicate with the database. And we never write any SQL queries, right? SQL statement in our application, right? Because of the SQL injection problem, which we will discuss later, right? Most of the time, what we will use or what we will generally do is in the database, we are going to create storage procedures, and from our application, we are going to call the storage procedure. So today we are going to discuss how to use storage procedure in our .NET application, right? So how to call, so basically what we will discuss how to call a storage procedure without parameter, and we will also discuss how to call a storage procedure with the input parameter, with the output parameter, right? So everything we are going to discuss, how we will create storage procedure which doesn't take any parameter. We will create storage procedure which is only taking input parameter. We will also understand how we can pass output parameter to the storage procedure. What are input parameter? What are output parameter? How to work with the SQL data reader? How to work with the ADO.NET, right? Everything we are going to discuss. But before that, right, first we need to understand what is storage procedure. So can anybody tell me what is storage procedure? Guys?
There are procedures which are saved in the database, and you can call anytime you want.
That is fine. Yeah. So data storage procedure
It's not
means
a definition, but I mean, it's a description.
okay. See. Basically, what happened? This is whatever you say. It's absolutely right. Right. Perfect. So basically, storage procedure are nothing but database object which are created in the database, and whenever we call the data storage procedure, right, that statement or code or whatever you written inside the procedure body, right, that is going to be executed, and for whatever task you have create the storage procedure that is going to be performed. But even without storage procedure, we can also do the same thing. We can directly execute the statement, right? Then what is the advantages, right? The advantages is that the storage procedure are pre-compiled SQL statement, right? Pre-compiled SQL statement. Understand this thing, right? Actually, this is not SQL part, right? So let me show you these things practically, right? So right, so this is my website, right? .NET tutorials, SQL server storage procedure, right? I have provided a link. You can visit to this website and you will learn more about SQL server storage procedure. See, whenever we execute any TSQL statement, then first of all, what are the things before execution is going to happen? First, the SQL server will check whether the statement what you have written is syntactically correct or not. If it is not syntactically correct, then it will not execute your storage procedure. It will not execute your query. Once it check whether the query is syntactically correct or not, if it is correct, then it will select one execution plan, right? What is execution plan means? See, to execute that query, there might be multiple options, right? Among all the option, which option is best, which option is suitable for this syntax to or for this query to execute? That plan is going to be selected in the second step. Once it is select the plan, that is this in this way I'm going to execute whether to execute this query, right? I need to use indexes or not, whether index table is there or not, which type of index table is there. using index is fine or not, right? Whether I need to go for table scan or whether I need to go for I mean index scan. Everything he will take into consideration, and then he will select the appropriate, or he will select the best execution plan to execute your SQL query, right? Once he select the plan, in the step 3, the query execution is going to be happen. And this is going to be done each and every time you execute the query. Suppose, suppose I'm writing one query, select star from employee where name equals to Pranay, right? Where name equals to Pranay means, so he will do this thing. Again, I'm writing another query, select star from employee where name equals to Pratik, right? Then in that case, these 3 steps are going to happen again. That means there is a slight change in the value in my query. Again, these 3 steps are going to be happen. But if I'm writing select star from Pranay once, again I'm writing select star from Pranay, then in that case it will not going to do all these 2 steps, because that plan is already created. He can reuse that plan. But there is a slight change in the query value, right? The filter clause value. These things are going to be happen again and again, right? So somehow we need to somehow we need to reduce this step 1 and step 2, because this is going to take some time, right? Everything he is going to perform internally, definitely that things is going to take some time, right? So somehow we need to reduce this thing, and for that purpose, what exactly we need to do now? Once we check the syntax, right? Once we generate the query plan, then let me store that query plan somewhere in the database and then execute the query. Somewhere in the sense in the cache memory, right? Then execute the query. When I'm coming for the next time, when I'm trying to execute the same query next time, then I'm not going to use this syntax. I'm not going to generate the query plan. I can directly get the query plan from the cache memory and I can directly execute the query. That means these 2 steps are going to be reduced if somehow I can cache this execution plan, right? And this is possible by using storage procedure. So if you are using storage procedure, then while creating the storage procedure, you will check the syntax, you will select the query plan, and he will store the query plan in the cache memory. And whenever you execute the storage procedure, he can directly select the query plan from the cache and he will execute the query. So in this case, in the case of a storage procedure, these 2 things are going to be eliminated. And this is the reason why storage procedure definitely going to give you better performance as compared to your raw SQL statement. Right? Another, this is the major thing. Another advantage is that your network traffic is going to be reduced. You just need to pass the storage procedure name, right? Many advantages is there, but main objective of using storage procedure is this thing, right? So I have written a detailed article on storage procedure. You can visit and you can check. Clear, guys? Why we need storage procedure?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So I have provided the link. Please go through this link and check what is exactly how you can do all these things. Right. Now we need to understand. We understand what is storage procedure means. It's a database object. It contains some pre-compiled SQL statement, and whenever we call the storage procedure, that pre-compiled SQL statement is going to be executed. Right. Now we'll understand how we can create the storage procedure, how we can execute the storage procedure, right? How we are going to call the storage procedure from ADO.NET, right? Using different approaches, everything we are going to cover. For this purpose, we are going to use this student DB, right? Let me create this database with the required data. So in each concept, I'm providing the database, right? So that you will not get confused. So what is the name of the database? Student DB. I'm using the student DB. I'm creating one table with 4 column. I'm making this ID column as the identity, and I'm providing the seed and the increment value as 101, right? And I'm entering 4 student information into this table. Okay, let me execute the the script, it will create the table. Right now you can verify the data, right? So just make a select query, select star from student, right? So you can see our database is ready, right? So what exactly we are going to do? First, let us understand how to call a storage procedure without parameter, right? But if I want to create a storage procedure without parameter, then first of all I need to create the storage procedure. Where we are going to create the storage procedure? In the SQL Server database, right? So we have created the student DB, and within the student DB I have created the student table. Now I need to create, now from my application, I want to fetch all the student data, but I'm not going to use this raw SQL statement or TSQL statement. Rather than I'm going to use a storage procedure. So for that, let us first create the storage procedure, which is going to return me all the student data, right? So this is my storage procedure name. So the storage procedure is going to be, right, created by using this create procedure statement. This is the name of the storage procedure. This storage procedure does not take any parameter, right? If you want, you can pass parameter. That is also we are going to discuss, right? And again, you have to start the as keyword within the begin and end. This is the storage procedure body. I have written the select statement, right? Select ID name email from student table, right? Let me execute this statement. Once you execute the storage procedure, this statement, the storage procedure is created, right? Let me show you where the storage procedure is created. What is our DB? Shopping student DB, right? Within student DB, you need to go inside the programmability feature. Within the programmability folder, right, you will see storage procedure. And within the storage procedure, you can see this is my storage procedure, right? So this procedure does not take any parameter, but it is going to return an integer value, right? What is this, right? Integer value means it indicate whether the execution successful or not, right? So once you understand, if you are having any experience, right? Return value and output parameter, both are two different things. Using return value, you can simply return a integer number, right? Which indicates the status of the operation, whether the execution completed successfully or not, right? So once you go through the database part of SQL Server, then you understand this thing. We are not going to keep focus on this thing. We are only going to focus on the storage procedure and how to consume the storage procedure on from our application, right? So we have created the storage procedure. Now we will see how to call the storage procedure, right? So for that, first I will show you without using the, first of all, I will show you how to execute the storage procedure using SQL command. And later, right, later I'm going to show you how to, here now I'm going to use SQL data adapter. Later I will show you how to use the storage procedure with data set, right? So in this case, as you know, right, let me show you the step-by-step process. So we have created the storage procedure. What is the name? SP get student. So this is generally whenever you are defining so any kind of storage procedure, I generally prefer the prefix SP, right, which is specify storage procedure. And then get student means get all the student from the student table. So this is the naming convention I am following, but you can give any name that is up to you, right? So let me explain you the code. So this is the connection string, which is pointing to the student DB database on this server, right? You know this thing on your machine, you have to provide your data source name and the database name, what is you have created. Using SQL connection, so I'm creating one connection object, I'm providing the connection string, right? And then I'm creating the SQL command object, right? Previously, what we have provided? Previously, we have provided the raw SQL statement, right? So if you remember, you can also write this raw SQL statement here, right? This raw SQL statement, you can also write here, right? That is also fine. So instead of raw SQL statement, right? now we are going to write SP, we are going to provide the name of the storage procedure, right? And once, but now guys, remember, this is not a raw SQL statement, right? If this is not a raw SQL statement, then we also need to tell the framework that don't treat it as a raw SQL statement. Please treat as a storage procedure. And how we are going to inform this to the storage procedure? Inside the SQL command object, right? There is a property called command type, and we need to specify the command type. What type of a command you are going to execute? That is what you need to specify, right? If you go to the definition of this command type, right, then enum, then you will see there are three values. One is text, another one is table, and another one is storage procedure, right? So by default it's text, right? So by default is text. So previously, right, whatever statement we have written, that is a TSQL statement like this. This is nothing but your text, and this is the default. So we have not specified the command type. But now we are specifying a storage procedure. So storage procedure means it's a storage procedure. It is not a text. So explicitly you have to specify that the type is going to be a storage procedure. So you can see the name of a storage procedure, right? So what exactly we need to set? We need to set the command type as a storage procedure. If I'm not specifying this thing, then it is not going to work. Why? It will consider this as a raw SQL statement, and it will give you an error because this is not a raw SQL statement. It's a storage procedure. As it's a storage procedure, the default command type is not going to work. And in that case, we need to specify the command type. What is the command type? Yes, it is going to be a storage procedure. By using command type enum and by using this command type property, you need to specify this. Once you create the command object, right, where you have provided the storage procedure, right? If you are not using this, then other option is there. What is the other option? Command text. In command text, you have to provide this thing, right? This option is also available, right? And then the next one is connection. You have to provide the connection. So if you want, you can pass those things within the command object. And if you do not want to pass there, you can also pass like this. So it is up to you how you are going to create the command object, right? We have already discussed this. Once you create the command object, then you need to open the connection, right? So now tell me from this storage procedure, what we are returning? We are returning a single value, or we are returning the number of the number of rows affected by the DML operation, or we are returning a result set. What we are returning, guys?
Result set.
So if I'm returning result set, then which method I need to use on the command object? Execute reader, execute scalar, or execute non-query?
Execute reader.
Right, so execute reader. So I'm calling this execute reader, and we know that execute reader is going to return me what? SQL data reader, right? So it is going to return me SQL data reader object, and using SQL data reader and read method, I can access the result set like, right? I can access. So whatever the data this SQL storage procedure produced, those results set, right? It is going to access one by one, right? So you can access the data by using the ID, name, email, mobile number, or you can access by using the index position, right? So now you just need to execute the command and you will see the output as expected. Why I'm not getting the output? Yeah, you can see we are getting the output 2 times. Why? Because we have written both the options, right? Any question from anyone how to execute a storage procedure without parameter and without using data sets? So in this case, you are accessing the storage procedure result using a connection oriented architecture, because this SQL data reader work on connection oriented environment. Later we will see how we can use dataset to execute this storage procedure. But for now, is that clear?
Yes,
right? So here you need to remember the command text is fine. Everything is going to be same, but you have to specify the command type as storage procedure, and rest is going to be same, right? So now let us see some input parameter, right? So in this example, if you see in this storage procedure, I'm not taking any input parameter, right? And if you want to take any input parameter, how you can do this? Let me so what is I'm going to do? I'm creating a storage procedure, right? I'm creating a storage procedure which will return the student detail by the ID, right? I will pass ID as an input parameter, and based on the ID, it is going to return me the student data from the student table. So you know how to write the SQL query. This is the SQL query: ID, name, email, mobile from student, where ID equals to whatever the value I'm providing to this storage procedure, right? So this is the input parameter by default, and this input parameter. So basically, there are two types of a parameter in SQL Server, right? What are the parameter? One is input parameter, right? Another one is output parameter. So what is input parameter? It brings value, brings value into the storage procedure, right? And what is output parameter? Output parameter means returns value after the execution of the storage procedure, right? Right. So basically what happens now, before execution, input parameter will bring the value into the storage procedure. And once your storage procedure executed, whatever output parameter, they will take the value back from where you are calling the storage procedure, right? So currently I'm using input parameter. Later I will show you how to use output parameter. Input parameter means bring value into the storage procedure. Brings value into the storage procedure means while calling the storage procedure, I need to supply value for this input parameter, right? Suppose I'm providing a student ID 101, then it will return the student details whose ID is 101. If I'm passing 105, then it will return the student detail whose ID is 105. And here 101, 105, whatever I'm passing, that is nothing but input value, right? So let's see how we can do this, right? Let us first create this storage procedure. Yes, procedure is created, and you can verify the procedure inside the programmability storage procedure folder. You can see now my database containing is two storage procedure. One is sp get student, which is going to return all the student data. Another one is sp get student by ID. It is going to return me the student data based on the ID parameter, right? Now, how to call the storage procedure with input parameter, right? Let me show you this thing practically, right? Everything is going to be same, right? Everything is going to be same, but here the additional thing is how we can pass the input parameter, right? If you see, this is the same connection string, no need to explain. Creating the SQL object, that is also fine. I'm using the SQL command object. I'm specifying the storage procedure. What is I have created now is we get student by ID. I'm specifying the connection object where this command is going to be executed. I'm also specifying that command type is going to be storage procedure. But here, the important thing is that this storage procedure takes one parameter, right? So this storage procedure takes one parameter. If you go to the definition of command object, then you will find there is a property called parameters, right? There is a property called parameters, right? So there is a property called para. Where is that property? Yeah. So there is a property called SQL parameter collection parameter. So using that parameter collection, right, you need to specify the parameter. So cmd dot parameters, and using that parameters collection, you have to specify the parameter, whether it is taking a single parameter, whether it is taking multiple parameter, no matter, right? Parameter means it's an array, it's a collection. You can specify one parameter, you can specify n number of parameters, right? So how I'm going to create an instance? So how I'm going to pass the parameter? For that, first you need to create one parameter object. What is the name of the parameter? A class SQL parameter. I'm creating parameter 1, right? So generally you have to create the parameter with this syntax param id, right? So it will specify that this parameter is for id, right? So param id, and using this parameter you have to specify few. What are the things? Parameter name, right? Parameter name means what is the name of the parameter in your SQL server storage procedure. The name is @id, right? So here you have to specify the parameter name as @id. What type of a parameter is this? Integer type. You have to specify SQL DB type.in, right? What is the value you want to pass to this parameter? I want to pass the value 101. And this is a input parameter or output parameter. What is the direction? It is going to return the value, or it is going to take the value to the bring the value into the storage procedure. Yes, it is going to be input parameter. It is going to take the value from the .NET application to the storage procedure. So you have to specify the direction as input. So this is how you need to create the parameter. And if it is an output parameter, then you have to use output, right? But in this case, this is a input parameter, right? And whenever you are using output parameter, then you do not need to pass the value, because that value is going to be written from the storage procedure. But for input parameter, you need to use this property. For output parameter, you do not need to use this property, because in output parameter, we are not sending the data. We are receiving the data. Receiving data means it is the responsibility of the storage procedure to set the value, right? So once you create the parameter object, then within this command object, there is a collection called the parameters. Inside that parameters collection, you need to add this parameter, right? Now everything is fine. Open the connection, execute the data reader object, right? And whatever the record written by this command, right, by this storage procedure, you can access in a connection oriented environment using SQL data reader. This read method will check and it will return true as long as there is data. And if data, then you can access the data by using the string key name, or you can access by using the index position, right? Now run the application. Right? So we are getting the 101 student detail. Why we are getting 101 student details? We are passing 101. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So this is how you need to pass a parameter. Later, I will show you how you can pass multiple parameters also, right? So now what I'm going to do is one example, right? So basically what I'm trying to do, I'm going to show you how to use input as well as output parameter, right? So you can see this is a storage procedure for creating a student. So I'm providing the name as sp create student. And this storage procedure expecting 3 input parameter, right? So one is name, another is email, another is mobile, and it is expecting one output parameter. Say here I'm specifying the parameter with out keyword. So whenever you specify means this is going to be out parameter, and these are nothing but your input parameter. What this storage procedure is going to do, it is going to insert this student details into the student table. And if you see the student table, the ID is the identity column. That means what? It means while creating the student object, I do not need to pass any value for the ID column, right? Because this is identity column, right? So in this case, you can see I'm inserting the student data, right? And I'm only specifying the name, email, and the mobile number. Once the record is inserted, right, here I'm fetching the ID of that employee. Suppose one employee is created, one employee is registered into the database, then what is his registration number? That is what I want to return. And I can get this by using the scope identity function, right? This is the function which is going to return the newly inserted value, right? Identity column value, right? In this student table, one record is inserted, right? What is the ID column? What is the identity column value of that record? That is what going to be written by the scope identity, and that is what I'm storing, right? I'm storing inside which variable? Inside this ID variable. Why I'm storing inside this ID variable? Because this is the output parameter. Output parameter means this storage procedure has to set this value. And how I'm setting? I'm using select ID equals to scope identity. What is the ID column value of this student? That value will be stored inside this parameter, and that value will be returned as part of this storage procedure, right? So let me create this storage procedure, right? So if you remember this storage procedure, expecting 3 input parameter and 1 output parameter. So we have to create the parameters array accordingly, where you need to provide 3 input parameter and 1 output parameter, right? Let me show you the things practically. This is the connection string. This is the connection object, and here I'm providing the storage procedure name as a create student, sp create student, providing the command connection object, right? Specifying that it is a storage procedure, right? So how many parameters we need to create? We need to create 3 parameters. I'm showing you 2 approaches, right? So 3 input parameter and 1 output parameter, right? So previously either the data type is going to be integer, and now this name data type is going to be varchar, character, string. So here in SQL DB type, right? If you go to this enum, then you will see this is the type, right? This is the type not for your C# language. This is the type that you can use in your database, right? In database, you can use big int, binary bit, character, date, time, float, right? What type of parameter is that you can specify using this SQL DB type. Don't think that this is the data type of your .NET, right? This is the data type of your SQL server, right? So these are the data types. So here I'm specifying that it's going to be varchar data type, right? So because if you see here, I'm using varchar, right? So here I'm specifying this is the varchar data type, and the value is going to be text for this name parameter, and it's going to be input parameter, and then I'm adding that parameter to this parameter collection. This is one approach of adding parameter, where you need to create the parameter object, and you need to add the parameter object to the parameter collection. So in this case, apart from this, there is another approach that you can use. So in that approach, what you need to do, you just need to specify the parameter name and value, nothing else. Internally, when you are executing, right, you will try to store this value inside this parameter in SQL Server if the value is compatible with the data type what mentioned in your parameter data type, right? So in this case, varchar, and it is in, right? So this is the output parameter. We have created the parameter object for name, right? Directly you can pass email like this and a mobile number also like this. This is also possible. So you can create an object of a parameter array. You can add that object to the parameter collection, or you can pass the key value. So in this case, add with value means what? You will add the parameter with the value. So this is nothing but your parameter name, and this is the value for that parameter. And this is possible only when your parameter is input parameter. This is not possible. You cannot use this add with value of method to add output parameter, because in output parameter, this value is not there, right? So how you can do the output parameter? You can see you need to create one parameter object like this, and you have to set what is the parameter name. The parameter name is @ID. Then you need to provide the data type. What is the data type? Data type is going to be integer, right? Integer data type. Direction, it is the mandatory thing. Parameter direction is going to be output. And here you do not need to specify the value, because this parameter, using this parameter, we are not sending the out data. We are receiving the data from the storage procedure. So no need to specify the value property. And once you create the output parameter, then you can add that parameter to the parameters array. And then execute the connection object, right? And in this statement, whatever operation I'm performing this. You can see this is the student operation, right? Inserting data, right? So you can also store that output in a variable for indicating the number of statements that affected by your query. But I'm not interested with that, right? What I want the output parameter, right? So you can see I'm providing one output parameter, and we are setting the value for that output parameter. So I want that output parameter value. What is the name of the output parameter? This is nothing but output parameter. So you can call output parameter dot value dot toString method, because this value is going to return an object, right? Because it's not possible that you can directly identify integer, right? Any kind of a value you can return using the output parameter, right? It might be a string, it might be you can consider it might be a boolean, it might be integer, right? So the value is going to be object, so you need to convert that to toString, right? So in this case, it is going to return me, or it is going to print the newly generated student ID, right? Let me run the application and show you the output. See, newly student generated ID is 104. So previously our database table having 3 rows, right? Now if you execute this query, then you will see that a text record what we have inserted that data. So if you look from our code, what is the value? You have specified text.NET tutorials, and this is the mobile number, and the same data you can see here. And this is the unique, this is the ID which is automatically generated, and that ID we have written by using the ID output parameter. Any question from anyone? How to use multiple input parameter, how to use output parameter without using parameter, how I can execute the query?
No, I guess this is simple, but just we need to practice just to
Exactly.
remember the sequence.
See, this is simple, but the later, whenever we are going to perform the bulk operation, at that time it is going to be little tricky or little bit. See, nothing is difficult, right? The thing is that you just need to understand the concept. What is there? How is there, right? If you do not know all these things, is there a SQL parameter? I need to create an object. I need to add that parameter to the parameter collection, right? If you do not know how to create the storage procedure with output parameter, then it is going to be a difficult task for you. If you know this thing, then this is not that difficult, because we have already discussed this is connection object, command object. Here you just need to pass the storage procedure name, right? And here you should know, if I'm passing a storage procedure, then I have to use this command type parameter, right? So this thing is very simple, but you just need to do practices, and you just need to remember the thing. If I'm using a command type as a text, right? A command text as a TSQL statement, then what is the command type I need to set? And if I'm executing a storage procedure, then what I need to do and what I need to set, right? So this is simple, right? This is simple, but the thing is going to be a little difficult, or difficult in the sense, it's going to be a little tricky when you are going to execute the storage procedure with and returning the data as a and storing the data in a data set, right? So this thing is fine. It's very simple, and I always start the things from the simple example, right? So once you understand this thing, right, then we can proceed and we can understand, right, how to work with storage procedure and the data set. Because this example, whatever I have shown you 2-3 examples, right, all are going to be on SQL data reader, right? And using this SQL, you can consider this execute non-query, right? Because in this case, everything is working on the connection oriented architecture, right? Now we are going to see how we can work with the disconnected oriented architecture, right? First of all, let me ask you any question from anyone.
Sir, one question, like, can you go to that SQL server? Yeah, this scope identity, is that a built-in function, or is that what is?
This is a built-in function, right, which is going to return the newly created identity column value in your database. So in this case, I'm using this Student table, I'm inserting one data. What is the ID value, right? Which is the identity column value that is going to be written by this built-in function.
Identity column means the primary key.
No, not the primary key. The column which you have created using the identity. You know what is identity?
No, sir, I'm not very
So
sure.
first of all, learn SQL
Each
Server. Right?
column, each
So-
column will be identified with this unique number.
No, this is not unique number. Identity means, see, if I'm removing this statement here, right, then while inserting the data, I need to provide value for this column. So in this example, am I providing the value for ID column?
No.
No, identity means in SQL Server, you can consider it is auto-generated.
Hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Auto-generated. So this column value is going to be generated automatically, right? And while inserting the data, you do not need to pass value for that particular column. You can make this column as a primary key. Primary key is different. Identity column is different. You can make any other column as identity column, no issue. Primary key means it is going to make check the uniqueness of that column. Identity column means it is going to generate the column value automatically. So in this case, you can see while inserting the data, I pass the value for the ID column.
No.
No.
Why? Because this is auto-generated, right? And that auto-generated ID column value, if you want to access, or you can say identity column value, if you want to access in the database, you have to use this scope identity. And that ID value, what is auto-generated, the latest ID value, right? That is going to be stored inside this variable.
Okay.
Clear?
It's an auto increment column. I mean,
Yeah,
whenever
yeah,
you
it's going to
increase
be-
a record, if you
Yeah.
insert a record, it will increase automatically depending
Exactly.
on the value of the. You
Previous
have a
value.
step value. You have a step value
Exactly.
when you
Suppose I'm
when you
starting,
define it. Okay, one. In this case, is one.
right?
Yes.
In this case, it is, you can see 0, 1, 2, 3. Each time it is incrementing the value by 1, right? If I pass 5, then you will see 100, 105, 110, 115, 120. Right? So guys, you need to practice SQL Server, right? So if you want to become a good developer, then you should know what is storage procedure, what is storage function, what is trigger, right? What is how to create a job, all these things you should know, right? You should have very good understanding of SQL Server database. Why? See, if you do not understand what is join, what is union, intersect, all those things, right? Then you will not understand the LinQ queries, because LinQ is completely depend. LinQ, how easily you will understand LinQ, that basically decide how strong you are in SQL Server, right? So we practice SQL Server. I have created my website, right? You can access, you can go to, you can visit to this website, right? Many articles I have written, right? Identity column. You can see there is a column article I have written for identity column. So you can go to this, what is identity, seed, increment, what is it, what is increment, right? All these things I have written here. So just go and view this content, right? And I hope you will understand. Here I'm also showing scope identity. You may also use the built-in identity or identity current table name, right? Many options are there, right? So you should know these things, right? Clear, guys?
Yes.
And don't think that I'm going to cover SQL Server part here also. I'm only going to use the SQL Server. Whatever code I am going to read, right, I will explain that part. Everything you have to learn by yourself, right? So this is how you need to work with SQL Server storage procedure in connection oriented architecture. Now let us try to understand how we can work with SQL Server in disconnection oriented architecture. Whenever I'm saying disconnected means you have to use data table and a data set, right? For that purpose, I'm going to create a different database. Let me delete the existing employee DB. Right. So I generally prefer this approach. Every time I'm going to use the database and all these things, I'm going to rewrite the script so that you do not need to be confused, right? So in this case, I am created the employee database. I'm creating the employee table. And here again, you can see I'm using the identity column. So this ID column, not only my primary key column, but it is also going to be my auto increment column. So identity you can consider as auto increment, right? So you can see while inserting the data, I'm not providing the ID column value and it is going to start from 1000 and the increment value, the step value is going to be 1, right? So let me run the select query to show the output. Right, so this is the data, right? On this data we are going to perform the operation, right? So once we create the database, right, so let me create a storage procedure with input parameter, right? So let me create a storage procedure with input parameter, right? So what is this storage procedure is all about? Can anybody tell me? How many parameters this storage procedure is taking?
Two parameters.
What type of parameter? Input, 2 parameter, input or output?
Input parameter.
Input.
And then whatever query I have written, so based on this 2 input parameter, I'm filtering the data, right? So suppose I'm going to pass age equals to 25 and the department equals to what I can say IT. Then what this is going to return? It is going to return me all the employees, right? From the employees table where age equals to 25 and the department equals to IT, right? Or you can say age is greater than 25, right? Department equals to IT. This is also you can write, right? For now, I'm just using to equal operator because intentionally I have written some employees with the age 25, right? So it's basically it's completely on your business requirement what you want to implement, right? So this is a storage procedure which is taking 2 input parameter, and based on the input parameter, it will filter the data and it will return the data as a result set, right? Now what is my requirement? Give me 1 minute, guys. Right. So let us understand how we can execute that storage procedure and how we can store the result of that storage procedure in a data set. So in this case, as this storage procedure returning a single select statement, you can also store that result set inside a data table also because it is going to return a single select statement, right? So this is the connection string. This is the connection object. I have created an instance of a data set to store the result. I'm creating the SQL command object, right? Here I'm specifying the command text as the storage procedure name. I'm specifying the command type as storage procedure. I'm also specifying the connection object, right? So instead of this, you can also use the overloaded version, right? Which is taking the SQL command text as a parameter, right? You can also specify this. What is the second parameter? Connection object, right? Connection object, right? What is the third parameter? Transaction we are not going to use. Okay, so this is the 3 things we can use, right? So you can simply remove these 2 statements. You can comment these 2 statements, right? So any approach you can use, right? So once you create this, right? So how many input parameters are there? One is age, another one is department. So I'm creating a parameter s, specifying the integer as the data type.
Sir, you have commented the command type instead of connection.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You have to uncomment this. You have to comment this connection object, right? Right. So in this case, what is the parameter name? So guys, remember this parameter name is going to be same, should be same as the parameter name of your storage procedure, right? And this is the data type. It's going to be integer, value is going to be 25, and the direction is going to be in input. And then I'm adding that parameter to the command object, right? Even you can directly add the parameter like this. So department equals to, this is my parameter name, and the value for this parameter is going to be ID. So you can use add method, or you can use add with value method. If you are using add method, then it is expecting one SQL parameter, and if you are using add with value method, then you have to provide the key value pair, right? Key is nothing but your parameter name, and what is the value for that parameter, that what you need to pass here, right? Then what I'm going to use, see, as we are going to use data set, right? Data set means we need to use SQL data, cmd.execute query, non-query, or we are going to use the data reader. Guys, right?
Sorry,
For,
sir, can you please
sorry,
go?
for connection
Execute
oriented,
non-reader.
for connection oriented architecture, you need to use SQL data reader, right? So for connection oriented SQL data reader, for this connection, what you need to use? SQL data adapter. And inside this SQL data adapter, there is a method called fill. And to this fill method, you need to pass either dataset object or
Data type.
data table, right? So in our example, both are going to work because it is going to return a single select statement, right? So how we are going to do? So in this case, I'm not going to specify the command text, all these things, right? So this SQL data adapter class, while creating the instance, right? I have already created the command object, which is already know what is the text, what is the storage procedure, where it is going to execute the storage procedure, what type of a command I'm going to execute. So simply I need to pass that command object to the select command. Right? Simply pass this to the select command, and if you go to the definition, then what it is saying? Gets or set a transact SQL statement or storage procedure used to select records in the data source, right? So in this case, any select command you have to specify, but in this case, right, I'm not specifying any select command, rather I'm specifying the SQL command, right? This is the command, right? This SQL command I have specified here. Right now, when I call this fill method, right, it is going to execute the storage procedure which is specified in the command object. Or it is going to execute that storage procedure on the connection string, right? On the connection string, or you can say on the database which you specified in the connection string parameter. And as we are already we are specifying that the command type as storage procedure, so it will treat this command text as a storage procedure, right? So this is the important thing that you need to remember. You have to specify the select command, right? So once you specify the command object in the select command, you just need to call the fill method, pass the data DS, right? DS in the sense data set, right? So instead of a data set, you can also pass a data table, right? So you can also pass the data table, dt equals to new data table, right? So first, let me show you the example using the data set. Then I will show you the example using data table. So, so if I want to paste the data, right, data set does not hold the data by default. Inside data set, it is going to create a data table. So in this case, what is the table name? Can anybody tell me?
Table.
The table name is by default going to be table. The index position is going to be
0.
0. So you can say, first of all, I'm accessing by using the index position 0. This is the same row ID or name, all these things you can access, or you can access by using the integer index position, right? Everything, let us see the examples, all those examples one by one. First of all, using the index position, right? So you can see the data, 2 employees are there whose age is 25 and who belongs to IT department. Why I'm getting 25, right? There is some issue in our code, right? What is the issue? Here you need to specify what? Department, right? What is the column name? Department. So instead of using age and age, you need to specify the department here, right? Now run the application and you should see the department name, right? Now Now, instead of this tables 0, I can also make use of that name, right? Default name is going to be table, right? Let me run the application. You are also going to get the same output, right? Now, instead of passing data table, sorry, DS, I'm passing this data table, right? As I'm passing data table, I do not need to call this thing. I can directly call the data table.row. Again, I'm going to get the same output. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Right? This is how you need to use storage procedure, right? So another approach of calling storage procedure and storing the result in data set. Let me show you another approach. Right? So in this case, this is not another approach. You can consider this is the same approach. So previously what we have done, previously what we have done, we have created the SQL data set, data reader object, right? And within the data reader object, right? What we have did, we just write the select command and pass this, right? So these things, right? These things can be simplified by using this statement, right? So if you use this statement, this is going to work, and if you use this statement, this is also going to work. There is no differences between them, right? Now, what I'm doing, I'm not creating any parameter object now. I'm directly using this add with value method, because most of the time, if you go and watch in your existing project, most of the time you will find or you will see this add with value method. But you can also use the add method where you can pass one SQL parameter object, right? So this is also another approach. This is also going to work, right? So this is also, so you can create an instance like this, or you can create an instance where you said the only difference is that whatever SQL command we are passing to the constructor, that is going to assign to the select command object only, which we are doing here manually, and here it is going to be done by the framework automatically. Clear, guys?
So one doubt.
What
This
is
add with value, above method, there is alternate method not to pass the value. There we are specifying each type, like what is the type of it, and whether what is the mode, whether it is input or output. So add with value is just passing the name and value. So will it take
yes,
all
yes.
these
So,
things?
so exactly what it will do, it will try to store this value inside this variable if possible, right? So in this case, age, integer. So it is trying to store this 25 inside this age variable, and it is accepted, right? Now, what I'm trying to do, I'm passing this age value as HR. HR is a value, right? So in this case, you will not get any compile time error, but at runtime, you will get some error. So what error? Error converting data type in marker to int. So by default, if you are passing this value, the data type is going to be n marker, which cannot be stored inside this integer value. So based on this value, the compiler, the framework, no, it's a string value, right? And I cannot store that string value inside this integer data. By default, everything is going to be decided when you are using add with value method, and if you are using parameter, SQL parameter, at that time you can specify all those things. But here, by default, based on the value, you know it's a string value, so data type is going to be n marker.
Okay, so how it will come to know that it is whether it is input or output in that code?
So if you remember from the in our previous example, I have told you you
Yes.
can pass only input values using add with value method. You cannot pass output parameter using this approach.
Okay.
Yes or no, guys?
Yes, definitely.
Right. So you cannot pass output parameter using this add with value method.
I guess this add with value doesn't provide that compile time security, but the previous one where we are like explicitly defining like this
Exactly.
input to value data type should be like this. So it is actually providing that compile time security as well.
Exactly. So you can see there is only one version, which is taking parameter name and object value, right? So you do not have that flexibility where you can decide it's a, it's a value, right? Which you can specify it's going to be input type or output type. This is not possible because only one overloaded version is there, right? And if you use SQL parameter, if you use this version SQL parameter, right, there you can specify, right? There is multiple properties are there, right? Using those properties, you can specify the type of the parameter.
So
Did-
yeah, so basically when we are like providing value on line number 31 as a 25 for the age, right? So we can type at the time of when we run the application, we can also provide the 25, right? With the help of the read
Yes,
key value.
absolutely, absolutely. So in this case, suppose that is the common thing, na? It's not going to hard coded. Suppose I'm creating one variable, I'm storing the value 25, right? I can store that variable here. That is fine. So at runtime, whatever value you entered from the UI, right? That value you can pass.
Okay. Mhm.
Clear?
Yes.
Right. So this is how you are going to work. But the thing is that, give me 1 minute, guys. Right. So now what is our requirement, right? Suppose I'm going to call the storage procedure. So you can see this is the process of calling the storage procedure, right? You can see this is the process of creating a data set object, creating the command object, right? Here you can see here I'm using connection to create a command object, right? This is also another option. Instead of using this connection command object, you can also use a new SQL command. That is also fine, right? Right, everything is there, right? Then I'm adding the parameter, I'm creating an instance of this, I'm calling this method, right? So if I'm going to use this storage, if I'm having multiple storage procedure, right? And if I want to call the storage procedure at multiple different places, then what? Then I need to repeat these things again and again. Yes or no? Right? So again and again, I need to create the connection object. Again, I need to create the dataset object. Everything I'm going to repeat. So what? So what my requirement is? So what my requirement is? I want to create a generic method. That generic method is going to do the storage procedure calling activity. Whether the storage procedure takes any parameter or whether the storage procedure does not take any parameter, no matter what is important, that storage procedure is going to return me a data set. That's it, right? And I want to make a generic method for that purpose, right? So let's see how we can do this, right? First of all, let us create one storage procedure, right? So you can see this is the get employee storage procedure. So this storage procedure is going to return all the employees from the employee table. And we are having another storage procedure, which is going to return the employees by age and department, right? So you can see this is one storage procedure. This is another storage procedure, right? So this storage procedure also return a data set, result set. This storage procedure is also return a result set, right? So now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to create a generic method, right? And that method can execute, right, my application code, right? So let me show you these things practically, right? See, so this is my generic method, right? So this is my generic method. Generic method. So in your real-time application, you do not need to write the same code again and again. So this execute storage procedure return dataset, it's a generic method which is going to execute the storage procedure and return the dataset. If you are having a storage procedure which is going to execute and return a dataset, right, then you can call this method and this method will do rest of the things. But to this method, what is the things is needed, right? So this method, you have to provide the connection string where you want to execute this procedure, right? So you have to provide the connection string. You have to provide the procedure name, what procedure you want to execute on this connection string. And this is nothing but your optional parameter. So whenever I'm creating a parameter array, and you can see I'm decorating that parameter array by using this params keyword. So whenever I'm using params keyword, means what? This parameter list is optional, right? While calling this method, if you want, you can pass a parameter list array. And if you do not want, don't pass. This parameter array is not going to give you any kind of compilation error, because this params keyword explicitly makes this parameter are optional parameter. So basically you can consider this is my optional parameter. If the storage procedure requires some parameter, you need to create a parameter array. You need to pass that parameter array to the while calling this method. If your procedure does not require any parameter, you do not need to pass any parameter. In that case, you just need to call this method by passing the connection string and by passing the procedure. Now, if you look at this, so this storage procedure is expecting some parameter. That means while I'm calling the method by passing this sp get employees by department storage procedure, at that time I need to pass the parameter. At that time I need to pass a parameter array. Now, coming to the second storage procedure, this sp get employee storage procedure, it does not take any parameter. So in that case, I just need to pass the connection string and I just need to pass the procedure name, but not anything for this third parameter, which is a optional parameter. Right now, I'm creating the dataset object. Once I create the dataset object, I'm creating one connection object. You know what is this? So variable connection. Instead of a variable, you can also write a SQL connection. That is fine. And this connection object is created based on this connection string, what it received as an input parameter. Right? Then what you need to do, you need to create one SQL command object, right? You can create the command object by using SQL connection.create command, or you can also create the command object by using this. Right? So this is SQL command, right? Right? And here you need to specify the connection string. Right? So you can also do like this. Or instead of doing these things and these things, so what I can do, I can directly use these things. So SQL connection.create command. This is also going to return the command object, right? And in this case, you do not need to specify the connection object separately, right? And then I'm using creating an instance of a SQL data adapter. So this instance, I'm passing this command object, because whatever the storage procedure, that storage procedure is going to execute on this connection string, right? So this information we have stored inside this command object. I'm passing that command object to the SQL data adapter constructor. Then I'm specifying the command type, right? I'm specifying the command type as storage procedure. I'm specifying the command text. It's nothing but the procedure name, right? Then I'm checking if parameter list, right? So in this case, this parameter list is null or not, right? If the parameter list is not null, then what I'm doing, I'm just writing command dot parameters. And now I'm not writing add method or add with value method. I'm writing add range method, because this is parameter list. This is not a single parameter. I can use the add method. This is a array, right? So for that purpose, I'm going to use add range method. It might be contain one parameter or n number parameter, doesn't matter. But if it contains at least one parameter, then this method is, this condition is going to return me true. And at that case, I'm going to add that parameter to this add range method. If it is contain multiple parameter, then also no issue. Then what I'm trying to do, I'm calling the fill method and I'm filling the data set, right? And finally, I'm returning the data set. So now, now from my application, from different location, right? I can use this method, and I need to pass these three information, and the rest of the thing is going to be done by this method. And it, after executing the storage procedure, it is going to return me a data set which contains the result right now. First of all, you need to create the connection string, because this is one of the parameter which you need to pass as a value argument, right? So I'm creating the connection string. And for this parameter, right, for this sp get employees by argument parameter, I need an parameter array. I'm not creating a single parameter. I'm creating a parameter array, right? And inside this parameter list, I'm specifying the two parameters. One is age parameter, another one is department parameter, right? So I am having the connection string, I'm having the parameter list. Then can I call this method by passing this by specifying this as the storage procedure name? Yes, absolutely, you can do this. Right now you can see I'm calling this storage procedure, specifying the first parameter as the connection string. Second parameter is the storage procedure, what is I want to execute, and the third parameter is the parameter list, right? And once this storage procedure execute, it is going to return me a data set, and I can visit, and this is going to return me a single data table. So I can access that data table using the index position, using the name, right? Default name is going to table, and using the rows properties or rows collection, I can access each data row from that data table, and I can print the data. Here I'm printing by using the column name, string column name. You can also access using the integer index position. This is one thing is completed. Now I want to execute the second storage procedure. So we are already the already the connection string, right? So then I can pass the connection string, and I can pass the storage procedure name, right? sp get employees, right? And in this case, you can see, even though I'm passing two parameter, even though this method accept three parameter, it is not complaining, right? It is not providing any error for this parameter list, right? Here I'm not passing. Why? Because this is the optional parameter. Optional parameter means it is up to us whether we need to pass or not. If we are passing, that is fine. If we are not passing, then that is also going to be okay. Right now, I'm executing this once this storage procedure execution completed, it is going to return me a data set which is going to contain all the employees information, and then I'm using this for each loop. I can print the data. If anything goes wrong, then that will throw one exception, and that exception is going to be handled by this catch block, right? Now, if I run the application, right, then you will see both the storage procedures are going to be executed. First storage procedure, which will store the result of two employees, right? Because the condition is and the department, right, accordingly is fetching the data, and the rest of the data you can see like this. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Sir, one note, like the third parameter, how it is becoming optional? Like
by using these params, I am making these params. Param means if you want to make any parameter as optional, right, then you have to use these params. Params, it's a keyword, and this keyword basically makes this parameter as optional. And always the optional parameter should be the last parameter, right? It's not like that. After this statement, I cannot write a string name. This is not possible, right? Optional parameter means it should be the last parameter, right? We are having one session where I'm going to discuss the different ways to make the parameter as optional, but this is one of the way.
okay, that is a keyword. It's not related
Exactly.
to parameter list, is it?
No, it's a keyword.
Okay.
Right. So, and guys, for this example, one assignment for you guys. So in this case, I'm making a generic method which is returning me a data set, right? Now you have to make one generic method which is going to return a single scalar value. You have to execute on storage procedure. That storage procedure is going to return a single scalar value, right? That scalar value might be an integer value, might be a string value, might be a Boolean value, right? That can be anything, but you have to make that method as generic so that I can execute that method at many different places. This is a task for you guys. Are you guys able to do that?
Yes.
So in that case, instead of a data set, the return type is going to be object, right? So you have to
Yes.
create one object parameter. And in this case, you do not need to use this data set or this storage data adapter, all these things. You can use command dot execute. I mean execute scalar, right? So that is possible. Execute scalar, that is going to return a single value, right? And you can return that value. That execute scalar is going to return the value in the form of you can say object, and that is what you need to return, right? If you are returning a data set, then in that case, you need to use this data adapter. If you are not returning a data set, right, then data adapter is not required. You can directly create the command object and execute non-query method is there, right? That is going to return the number of rows affected. That is also we do not want. What is we want? We want a single scalar value of any data type. Execute scalar method is there. Clear? Just try it. If not possible, then we will see, right? And once you develop the application, please share the code so that other people can view the code. Clear?
Yes.
Right. The next important thing of what we are going to discuss is bulk insert update in ADO.NET using storage procedure, right? Bulk insert update using storage procedure. See, we'll discuss today or we'll because it is going to take more time.
I would suggest like in next session, so like we can practice and like
Exactly. Because to understand this thing, many things I need to explain. Merge statement is right. Different options are there. Without using merge, right? Different approach to perform the bulk operations, right? Again, it is going to be a very important from the development point of view, right? Because most of the time, if you want to perform some, some kind of a bulk operation, bulk insert, bulk update, right? In that time, it is going to be most thing. And you have to also understand from the performance point of view. We are having different options. Which option is best? Which option I need to use, right? That is what we are going to cover, right? So I suggest it is going to be in our next session. And the next session is on Monday, right? Not tomorrow. It is going to be on Monday. And guys, please do practices and whatever task I have assigned to you, please try to create by yourself,
sure.
right? Because this is very right. This is going to be very important. You can consider from today only our actual ADO.NET started, because up to yesterday or day after yesterday, right? We are only discussing the basic concept, right? Which is important. And once you understand the basic concept, these concepts are not going to be that difficult, because it is also going to be based on the basic concept only, right? Please do practices and please try to do the example or the assignment what I'm providing. Create one generic method, right? And why I'm saying this, because I see most of the developer, right, in my existing project, whenever I see they are repeating this code, right? One of the old project is there, right, where they are using ADO.NET. They are repeating this statement again and again. It's going to be time consuming. Now I can make a generic method which can do all these things. Why I'm going to write this SQL connection object, command object, data adapter object, all these things again and again. I can do this using a generic method, which will save
Yes.
lots of time. Right?
Yes.
And you will understand these things only when you are having experience, right? If you are a fresher or if you are a beginner, right, then you cannot think in terms of a generic method. What you will do generally is you are going to do, yeah, in this place I have to call one method. Let me create the connection, command, data adapter, all these things, call the method. Right? Generally, what people are doing, but this is the best of. Right? You have to declare few generic method. In this case, for data set, you can make one generic method where you can use the data. Execute reader method, execute scalar method, execute non-query method. For each of this method, you can create a one generic method, and from wherever you want to execute to scalar method, you can call that method. If you want to execute, so accordingly you have to decide. Right? And guys, never ever try to write a TSQL statement in your SQL in your .NET application. Never try or never write the TSQL statement, because the TSQL statement is going to give you poor performance, right? You can see in this example, I have shown you this diagram, not this one, right? So you can see what is happening with SQL. What is why it is going to be very going to give poor performance. So we should use storage procedure. right? Using storage procedure also, the network, the data, whatever you are passing over the network is going to be less. What is you are passing? You are just sending the procedure name. That procedure might be contain 10 line, 20 line, 50 line, 100 line. We are not passing the whole SQL statement over the network, right? The network means the amount of data is also important. If the amount of data is going to be bigger, right, then it is going to take more time, right? Suppose so those who might be worked on real-time project, right, they might be know if I'm sending the data, right, from my API, 1 lakh record I'm sending in a JSON object. I'm sending 10 rows or 10 records from my JSON object, right? There is a huge difference, right? So basically over the network, if the amount of data is high, then definitely it is going to take more time. So in this case, we are not passing all the data, all the SQL statement. We are just passing a procedure name. It's a very small data, right? And that procedure might be contain a huge number of statements. Those statements we are not passing. But if you are using TSQL statement, then those huge statement you need to pass, right? So that's it for today. Any question from anyone?
So just one question, like you said, you mentioned the TSQL, like for normally for .NET SQL Server development, we use TSQL. Is it the case? Like I didn't get that point.
Sorry?
Like for SQL Server, .NET SQL Server application, we use TSQL only, no? Normally.
So I'm not understanding what is your question. What is .NET SQL? I don't understand that term.
Like for SQL Server, sorry, not .NET SQL. For SQL Server, what is the programming language that we use? Like these things, it
See,
is a
SQL,
TSQL.
SQL Server means, is there any programming language in SQL Server?
No. Suppose in Oracle we use SQL. So for SQL Server we use TSQL. No, is that the case, or it is the same thing?
See, TSQL means what? TSQL means transact SQL language, right? Independently, I have written this statement. This is the TSQL. Independently, I have written this statement. This is TSQL. But whenever I'm using this thing, right? So in this case, in this begin and end, I have written one select statement. But inside this statement, you can written any number of valid SQL statement. This is nothing but your PSQL. Right? So there is a TSQL and a PSQL. Using TSQL means independent one statement is going to be there. Right? PSQL means it's a group of SQL statement. Right? So this is PSQL. Do you, have you ever worked with PSQL, PLSQL?
No.
So first of all, learn what is TSQL, PSQL, right? Then you will understand these things. Right? See, and again, I'm saying, if you do not have database knowledge, right, then you cannot understand these things. Database knowledge is mandatory, right? For a database, for a developer, the C# as important C# for you, right? That is all that much important of a SQL is for you, right? If you do not know what is this statement is all about, then how you can understand? This is a simple statement, right? Going further, you might be have a storage procedure which contains 100 line of code, 500 line of code. Even I have written some storage procedure which is more than 1,000 line of code, right? And how you can understand, right? Further, right? If you do not understand the things, right, then how you can understand these things, right? Suppose in this case, I'm written some statement. Merge into employee E1 using employee is2 on E1 equals to when matched opted, right? How you will understand this thing? This is the part of a SQL server. I'm not going to explain this thing in detail. What is why I'm using read only? What is table type, right? You should know this thing, right? Even if you see I'm creating some table type, right? What is a table type, right? So you should know this thing. Do you have any idea about what is this table type? What is this merge statement? And how you are going to perform the inner join, what is join, outer join, inner join, left outer join, right? What is the use of an in operator, not in operator? I'm not going to explain this thing again here in detail. I'm only going to show explain the thing what is required. But apart from this thing, right, whatever I'm showing in the example, lots of things are there which you have to learn by yourself. See, I'm not, this is not our SQL Server course. This is C#. What is required from the SQL Server point of view, that much I can explain. But whatever I'm explaining from the SQL Server point of view, that is only 2%. You should know what is primary key, unique key, what is check constant, right? What is null, what is not null. If I'm creating one, see, in this case, I'm not, while creating this, I can pass null. Here I can pass not null, right? So what is the difference between them? You should know. If I'm specifying this 50, if I'm specifying 50 here, what is the meaning of worker 50? That you should know, right? Identity, you should know this thing. If I'm making a column as primary key, then what is internally happening? There is an index created, right? One clustered index created. Then you have to know what is clustered index, what is non-clustered index, how the indexing architecture is implemented internally, right? How the index table is created, how the index table, while I'm fetching the data from the database, right? Why we should have, if I'm using where clause, right? In where clause, I'm specifying some column, then those column should have some index table. If not index table, then why, how it is going to fetch the data? For that purpose, it is going to use a table scan. Why table scan is a very poor from the performance point of view, right? You should know all these things, right? So these things are not, because SQL Server is itself a huge concept, right? Without SQL, right? Without a database, no application is there. You should know database also in detail. Am I wrong or am I right, guys?
Yes, you are right. One question, like there are some
Yeah.
people who is working as a data engineer, is a ETL developer. They are only working as a database administrator. They're handling all these things, right? So like, do we?
I'm saying, right? ETL developer is that there are many things, right? So you see, if you are going to this, you have see analysis, reporting, integration. I'm not talking about all these things.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about only database engine. Database engine means you should know how to create storage procedure, how to execute storage procedure. See, in this case, this is storage procedure, right?
Yes.
And from the database, how I can execute? I can execute this storage procedure by using this exe execute command.
Yes.
I can execute this storage procedure by using exe command.
Yes.
Right? Exe. Right? I can even directly call the storage procedure, right? So I can see here it is executing, here it is also going to execute, right? What is?
You have selected two certain.
Right? This is also applicable. This is also going to be execute, right? So
Yes.
and if you see, right? So whenever I'm creating the employee database, I have created the primary key, right? So primary key means this is the employee table. So you can see keys is there. So this is the primary key column. Index is there, right? So there is a difference between a constant and indexes. And you can see this is the cluster index. How the cluster index is going to be created, right? Why we cannot create more than one clustered index in a table, right? So this thing you should know. Can I delete this one? Can I delete this one? So many things is there, right? You should know what is constant, right? You should know what is trigger. You should know what is index, right? You should know what is statistics, right? So these are the things, right? What is the use of the table type, right? If you are creating view, right? How you are going to use the view? What is it? What is this programmability feature, right? Inside this programmability feature, this storage procedure is going to be there, right? And here you can see parameter, right? In this case, you can see these are the two input parameter which I have created. You should know these things.
Yes.
Right. So if I'm going to create any job, how I can use the job, right? SQL Server object, right? So all these things. So how to take a backup of your database, how to restore the database, right? So from the developer point of view, for the development point of view, what is required that you should know. Yes, some of the time what happens now, the database time, you need to tell that my requirement is that I want to, if you do not have that access, right? I want to do some operation on the database, right? This is my requirement. They will create the storage procedure. They will return to you. But don't think that you are not going to work on database ever, right? Sometimes, most of the time, you are also going to work on the database because you are the developer. You understand the database perfectly, right? What DBA is going to do, they are going to manage the database. Database in the sense, suppose who are the user, they can access the database,
Okay.
right? If you are a user of then if you need access to database, then what kind of role I need to provide to you? Whether I will provide the access so that you can modify the DML, right? Modify the DDL, or you can only access to do the select operations, right? When to take the backup, when to restore the backup, right? If the server is they want to make single user mode, right? Then those kind of things are going to be done by the database team, right? But don't think that they are going to write this code for you,
Yes.
right? You have to write this storage procedure, all these things. Yes, sometimes some situations you need to tell them that this is my requirement. If you do not have that access, right? But mostly what happens in development environment, they are providing full access to the developer. Production environment, this is not possible. Right, production environment, you have to provide this SQL script, all these things, DML, whatever you can just make changes to your development database. You need to prepare the script, right? You need to provide this script to the database team. Database team is going to execute those script on the production server, right? If mostly developer, they are having access to development server, QA servers, but not access to the production environment or UAT environment. Right, again it is changes from company to company. Some small company are there where a developer having all access.
Yes, because I have seen couple of vacancies where they are like asking about SSIS and like SQL Server reporting as well, like in
Exactly,
developer role.
right, that is what I'm saying now. If it's a small company, right, sometimes you know, right, sometimes you know what is SSRS, how to generate report, right, all these things, right? But some companies are there, they are specific. Your role is API development, means you need to stick with API. You do not need to think about the database. For database kind of activities, you need to inform them. They will create the storage procedure and all these things, and they will inform you. But most of the time, nowadays, if you remember, if you working, right, any project you develop, you are using entity framework, right? So in entity framework, you have the complete control. You can do a DML operation by using your code, right? For that, you need to use entity framework, right? But see, again, it's company to company. But most of the time, you should know this thing, because see, if you know, right, if something some problem occur, then you can tell them, yeah, this storage procedure having this issue. Can you please fix this, right? Can you modify the storage procedure like this? You can tell. If you do not know, then how you can tell? Right, so
Yes, true.
and if you are working for a small company, right, then there is no separate team for a database. You only have to manage everything. You have to
Yes.
develop the code. You have to manage the database as well.
Yes. True.
Right? Because why I'm saying, because I'm coming with three different environments. I'm working with a small company. I'm working with medium range company, and I'm also working with the top MNC company. Right, the working culture is going to be different from company to company. Right, so be ready with your SQL. So I have already created one SQL Server tutorial course right on my website, which is completely free of cost. Right, I would strongly recommend it everyone to go and read the content sequentially. Right, don't go from one location to another location. Go in the proper sequence. Right. Right, so because while I'm going to use the transactions, right, then you should know what is transaction. Transaction in the sense, you should know how to implement transaction in SQL Server. Then only you can understand the transaction in data in ADO.NET or in SQL Server. And while you are going with the transaction, there is some concurrency problem. Why we are going for concurrency? How we can overcome? What are the different level of a concurrency? Right? What is data read? What is lost update, phantom read, snapshot? Right? Many things are there. Right? Those things you should know. And if you do not know, then please try to learn those things as soon as possible. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any more question from anyone?
Nope.
Okay. Because see, I'm giving you guarantee that from the data, from the C# point of view, I will make you master. After the end of this course, you will become a pro developer. But I cannot give you guarantee about your SQL knowledge. Right? That is not part of this course. Right? SQL you have to learn. Right? I'm not going to make you master in SQL, but yes, what is required, right, from the C# point of view, every statement by statement, every line of code, whatever I'm going to write or whatever I'm reading, right, you will understand very clearly. Right? And even I'm also going to not only the basic concept, I'm already going to start covering the advanced concept, right? Advanced concept in the sense you can understand in each chapter, right? I'm taking more time, I'm covering more and more concepts. These things you will not find from anywhere, right? These things, this example particularly, you will not find from anywhere, right? Because this is my personal experience, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
See you. Bye bye.